As I said earlier, one of the things that surprised me about what was going on with Covad and this whole experience is that people were isolated and they probably weren't, or we probably weren't living a true reality because we're unable to see what's really going on outside. That was a week ago. My attitude originally was be safe, wrap up, get outside, and drive around and experience what's going on so that you would understand what's really happening with Covad. But as I said, things have changed. We're going to have an opportunity to speak with the mayor a little bit and get a good perspective to see what's going on. So, and excuse the noise in the background, we are outside. And we are practicing social distancing. We are 6 feet apart, and we're being very careful in how we're approaching this interview. So, you know, one of the things I just mentioned was this whole compliant to defiant kind of attitude. And what brings it to mind is there was a story in the paper a little while ago, just the other day, about a lady in Texas who has a hair salon.
Yes.
And she decided she was going to open and be defiant to the rules. What really got me was when she was asked, you know, how long can you keep doing this? Will you persist in this? What if they ticket you again? And her response was, how much paper do they have? I mean, she's really going to stay out there and do this.
Yep.
But in light of that, you know, what does that mean to the community there? I mean, sure, her and her people are suffering, like we all are, I would imagine. But what does that mean? I mean, the potential of infection, to the community, harm to herself. But I like to say also, I understand because there seems to be a lot of misinformation that's happening surrounding the whole Covad thing. I mean, you know, we're according to some people,
yes,
we're supposed to use Lysol now to start shooting up ourselves with Lysol or something. But I mean, there's a great deal of confusion. What are people supposed to do? Not from a personal perspective, but from a, you know, elected official. What does this new attitude mean to you and to our community in Seaside?
Excellent question, because that is topical today, as you just explained. But what it means for people in this community is it creates the unsafe environment. Because what it does is it goes back to what we were doing before we had a handle on this spread of this pandemic, meaning the first thing we wanted to do to stop spread was shelter in place and social distancing.
Right.
And you know, it's unfortunate, but every business cannot be essential. Otherwise, the definition of essential wouldn't mean anything.
There you go.
So when you talk about the impact that it has, is if we have individuals determining for themselves what level of social distancing or what level of response they have to a pandemic, meaning a societal health crisis, then we don't have a good response. Right. Ergo, the next step is the spread of the virus continues. That's just the bottom line.
Right.
Because we don't know who will get it, of course. But one thing I know, and I try to tell a lot of people, we don't know what your body would do when you get it.
Right.
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 And some people are asymptomatic. Some people are not only asymptomatic, but it doesn't affect them at all. You know, meaning they not only that they don't have any outward symptoms, asymptomatic, but some of them don't even know they have it.
Right.
Some people asymptomatic, you have a cold, you have a fever, you're down for 3 or 4 days, boom, it's over with. But other folks, they get it, and unfortunately, they have to be, you know, when it strikes them, they're in the hospital. Right. They're on a ventilator, and unfortunately, ultimately, some people do pass away. So how do we know that when a person determines that they feel as though, well, I'm essential business, I'm hurting, I'll open up, I'll allow people in, who will be affected the most?
Right.
And we don't know that.
Yeah, there's no way of really telling.
Yeah. So so the last part of that, when you ask the question, who do you listen to? We have to listen to the health experts. As leaders, our responsibility is to filter that information that we get from the experts, and in some cases, you know, we're dictated by some of the health experts that's over our smaller community, and that's what we have to go by.
That was pretty global. I mean, not your answer, but the question.
Yes,
that the effect, if people were to continue, in going in what we might want to call a defiant mindset, that effect would bring us back. And it could bring us back even worse than it was when it initially started. It could bring us to a new point that we have not experienced yet. With that said, in understanding what could happen, how has the previous infection or the previous pass of this affected the city of Seaside from a financial perspective? What has that done to the city? And how was the office or the city hall handling this?
As you can imagine, it affected us like every other community. Right now, we determined that it's a rolling perspective, meaning we can't get a handle on it because it affected our tax base.
Right.
As of right now, we believe we're going to, in a decline of about, our budget will be reduced close to about $10 million.
Wow.
After it's all said and done, we may be close to $11 million. If we're able to get back up and running as soon as possible. But going back to your previous question is, how do we get up and running? And one thing we don't want to do is open back up, so to speak, our economy and then have to close down. As we become, and you're talking about not globally, but Seaside in particular, as Seaside becomes a hot spot and we have to close back down while surrounding communities may be able to move forward with their economic vitality of their businesses open. Right. Because what we won't be able to do is say, we're a hot spot, we have cases, but still allow the businesses that were open, non-essential, to stay open. Right. Now, the first reaction will be, well, let's close down the non-essential business back again in Seaside, but allow other ones in the county to go ahead.
Right, so everybody around you.
Everybody around you. So we've been fortunate enough in this county, we're all set down at the same time, and we'll be allowed to open back up in a similar manner at the same time.
Good. So there's a silver lining.
That's the silver lining. The silver lining is not to be, not to stick out.
Right.
Not to be the community that says they're the hot spot. You know, even though we're a small community, but we don't want to be highlighted as the community that continues their increase of positive cases. As you know, right now the county health officer is not breaking out the numbers by city, and fortunately, as mayors, we want to encourage that. But fortunately, there's I won't say it's not a need, but fortunately, he doesn't feel enough of a need to do it because the need would be if we have more cases and more fatalities. Right. So I'm not going to wish that just so I can get my individual numbers for the city of Seaside. Right. But if somehow our citizens and our small business people are not taking proper precautions, social distancing properly, we could potentially become that hot spot.
Right. So, and this is kind of, I mean, it's kind of the boilerplate from what you're talking about. It's the boilerplate for almost any city.
Yes.
I mean, because every county is different. We have states and counties that are opening up different businesses and opening up beaches and everything else. That news coming over to us is not applicable to us per se because of the infectious rate or whatever is going on with the pandemic here. So we have to manage it separately and differently. But the news coming out about the beaches being open kind of helps create the defiant attitude.
No, and that's understandable. Different places are going to have to be treated differently. We have, land-wise, we're a large county. But we only have about 400,000 people throughout Monterey County, roughly. But other counties have millions of people, and eventually it's only so much social distancing you could do if you come outside your house and walk around the block. Right. So I'm not advocating that they open up the beaches, but I am advocating that each individual county will determine by its own, and then each city will listen to that advisory from the county health department.
Right. So while we hear things nationally and statewide, it behooves us to pay very close attention to our county and city officials and how that information is being translated.
Oh yes, because we're watching the numbers, we're watching the data. We're in the hospitals, we're watching the data, collecting the data. So if we see beaches being filled in Southern California, I would say we'll see where they're at in 14 days, 18 days from now.
Right.
I mean, that's the only way you know.
Right.
Because that's what slows down. That's what it is. what they call bend the curve. Remember we were talking about that several weeks ago, bend the
Right.
curve. But I think we did such a good job. California being so progressive and one of the first states, and I know as a county, one of the first counties to institute shelter in place. We did such a good job that we bent the curve, we flattened the curve, but people perceived that as there was nothing to worry about from the start.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
one of those where, you pat yourself on the back and you stop looking both ways when you cross the street because you haven't been hit yet because you used to look both ways when you cross the street. It's one of those things.
Right,
Just
right.
because you've been successful at prevention doesn't mean you forget prevention.
Right. So keep going with what we're doing and pay attention to what the local authorities are giving us and be patient.
Well, you have to.
Right.
You have to. That's the only way we can get through it. That, again, the reason why we're talking about opening up now because we have flattened the curve. And the only way we flatten the curve is the social distancing. As you know, there's no vaccine out there.
Right.
There's no cure, no matter what you heard in the last 7 days. There's nothing you can inject, digest, or take right now to prevent COVID virus from attacking your body and hurting you.
Which brings me to the next question. From a public health perspective, has Seaside taken into effect, or the county, has taken into effect, put into effect any sort of emergency planning for this sort of thing going on? It appears that epidemic, pandemic, or a way of life, now, not global pandemic, but pandemic and epidemic seems to be a way of life. Which H1N1, MARS, with SARS, was that that was a swine flu I just mentioned, okay. H1N1. There's a great deal, Ebola.
Yes.
It just seems to be coming more frequently and more often. So with that information and considering what just happened or what's happening now, do you know of at the county level or at the city level, are we looking at or planning any emergency plan for things as they come down the pike? Or are we going to wait to hear from, federal government to state government to local,
right.
or are we going? Can we, from the office of mayor, can you take those type of measures immediately, and in the event something happens again?
The answer is yes, but as you know, as a county of our size, we depend a lot on the county health officer, which is the city's health officer, for lack of a better definition. And so we take the lead from him, whoever that holds that position. Our city manager is in constant contact, all city managers in constant contact with the county health officer, and they will determine our level of response to any type of pandemic. But I would say, again, as you know, Santa Clara was the first county in the state to call shelter in place with other 8 other counties in the Bay Area. And then we were about 3 days behind that. And then I think the state was about 5 days behind all of us. So really we're not waiting for a top-down solution. If the county health official feels that there's a need to, again, take proactive measures, shelter in place, things like that, then the answer is yes, we would take those actions. And the response I would say is that I think a lot more cities are looking very seriously at their stockpile of PPEs, particularly how it reflects on their level and their ability to meet the need of their essential workers. I don't think that was really fleshed out before. People had it, but they always thought it was time before. And if they didn't have it, the state didn't have it, then the federal government have it. And I think we mentioned before where the equation of the federal government coming through, that may be your third option. So you need to make sure you have the ability yourself to take care of your essential workers. And I think all states are going to respond that way. So I think what you just said is clear. Maybe before it was every 2 years you may dust off your protocols for responding to a crisis like this, health crisis. But now I think it's going to be every 6 month type thing, or at least yearly. People are going to say, well, we know about tsunamis, we know about earthquake. Let's talk about that pandemic.
Right. Well, let me back up. You said PPE. And just so people know, PPE stands for personal protection equipment. Much like a construction worker has to wear steel-toed boots and or vests, a hard hat, and no gloves, glasses.
Yes.
Your PPE in this in this case would be 6 foot social distancing, face mask, gloves, hand washing, and having the right type of formula to wash with. So that
Yes.
PPE covers.
Yes. I would say, yeah, definitely expanded to hygiene. Before it was just the equipment, but after that, people just normally would wash their hands or stay distance. But yeah, that's definitely included nowadays. And when people talk about it, the PPE, personal protective equipment, your first responders, sometimes they may have masks, sometimes they may have oxygen masks, you definitely have gloves, and sometimes they may even have to put on one of those protective suits
Right.
to go into someone's house and render first aid. Right. So that's the gamut of the PPE. And you made a good point about now included in that is hand sanitizer and the appropriate alcohol level. Yeah.
We constantly talking about our first responders.
Okay.
And police, fire, and city employees being essential services to our daily lives. Just off the cuff, what have you heard from the chief of police and or fire department? How are they feeling as first responders? What are their thoughts about dealing with this? They have to deal with people every day. They can't get around it. How are they feeling on a daily basis? How is it affecting their livelihoods, their families, their department? Have you heard anything?
Well, what I can say is what I'm hearing is that it is affecting them because it's a daily thing that they have to deal with. And like you just said, it's different from what they normally have to do. After you leave that fire, after you leave that police encounter, so to speak, you don't have to worry about taking anything home on your clothes or on your body to your family. You change your clothes at the station, maybe take a shower, get into your street clothes, and you go home. And just, the mental,
right,
the wear down. But nowadays, they have to think about their own health and safety. So it's affecting them, but I can assure you that they all are proud individuals and they love the job that they do. And that's what I'm hearing, that they want to come to work every day and they want to do their part to stem the tide and, of course, respond to any type of emergencies. While they consider taking precautions to protect themselves and the people they're looking over. So that's what I'm hearing. It's just natural as humans, but I do want to say is I don't hear any complaints from our city workers, particularly our fire and police or anyone, matter of fact, about doing their job during this crisis. But as humans, they do have to consider the effect that it may have on their families. But we haven't received any, call-in sick, unnormal call-in sick, or anything like that. So I just want to make sure I'm clear about the level of service that we continue to get from them during this crisis is just outstanding.
That's good to hear. And I think I'll jump on that. As I said, my attitude has changed from last week to this week. So the attitude of defiance really jeopardizes the health and welfare of the community by bringing police closer to contact with something that could be unnecessary. So again, patience being part of your PPE, right?
Yeah, it's a virtue. Like they said before, it's a virtue. And I think you hit one of the nails on the head when you said every time that we don't adhere to these type of protocols, we are increasing odds of anyone in this community becoming ill. Ergo, we need the police and fire and other first responders, particularly our ambulance drivers and things of that nature, to respond to that. And then that's another chance that they're taking that they may get sick.
Right.
And just think about it. In other communities, ambulance drivers, police officers, firefighters are getting sick, becoming ill, and when they can't come into work, then services are take a toll.
Right.
Response take a toll. Then that increase works on other individuals. Right. They become tired. They become complacent by natural happenstance. So what we want to do is take the pressure. That was the whole object. Going back into bending the curve, flattening the curve. That was the whole object. It didn't mean people won't get sick.
Right.
It meant we didn't want to overload the response at the hospital. Right. To the point where people will be left in the corridors waiting for services, in the hospital bed. So we've done a good job. I would just say be patient. Let us open up at the pace that health officials feel necessary, and we will get through this.
I just want to kind of summarize that statement in that if our first responders or city workers are responding to something we will just call a defiant response,
Okay.
and they become ill, we have less services for the people who may become infected. Subsequently, the people who are infected stay out longer,
Yes.
and the virus progresses because they weren't removed, taken care of, or paid attention to because we didn't have the responders in the first place. So in regards to the services that the city provides, and and the idea of looking at possibility of losing $11 million of fiscal aid or resource, has the state delivered money to you? Are they delivering money to you? Is it coming in a timely manner? What does that look like when you get it? Is it too little, too late? Is it going to be enough? How are we going to manage it? Or do you have any idea of how that might help the city of Seaside?
What we're hearing now at Dirrick is it will be a little and it will be a lot late.
Okay.
The state is already saying that they will, to take the pressure off the small business people and the property owners, they're delaying property tax. Still have to pay your property tax, but the state said they will hold on to the property tax for upwards between 60 and 90 days before they send it back down to the cities.
Okay.
Right? And so that's what I'm talking about, a lot late.
Right.
So we feel that it's coming, but we won't know when it gets here. And then other taxes, the state is saying, well, you can delay paying those taxes, and then it won't flow back down to the cities. So we are not getting any direct financial support. As you know, it's not coming from the federal government, it's not coming from the state. What little money the state has sent down is for our essential services, PPE type equipment and things of that nature, but it doesn't go to our general fund. It doesn't go to any service we can provide. Those are not responding to the COVID virus. So it's unfortunate, and that's why I say it's that rolling number of upwards, or it could surpass $11 million. By the time we reach the foundation of the bottom of this crisis economically, and at least we can open back up to bring in some tax revenue, we don't know what that amount will be. So it's hard for me to pin it down, but I can tell you, I know that the state and our state legislators are working hard, but they have not settled on how to backfill the money that the cities are not getting from the current tax base.
The effect of that going forward into the city of Seaside, or potentially into all the other communities around, the resources just aren't going to be there. Does that mean that the city of Seaside will continue to have resources shut down or minimized in order to catch up while people are coming back into the economy?
We know at a certain point, you can't have a society that's not out, right? So that's where we're talking about that defiance come in. So meaning if they're out, they're bound to want services. They're bound to need services. So we're going to open up eventually. It's about how you do it. How do you do it in a safe manner so you don't have that rebound effect and have to close down because you open up too early. I was on a conference call earlier this week with the California League of Cities, and they were giving us an update on the state. The cities as a whole are saying that they have lost about $7 billion worth of economic vitality.
Wow.
There's $7 billion. Each one of us have that amount of money we got to cut from our budget. Boom. All right. For example, San Francisco County is $1.7 billion in the hole, right? And so when I look at it and I say, Seaside, you're already maybe $11 million short, I can see the difference. But for me, that's just as consequential.
Exactly.
That's close to a third of our budget. So it's significant. And I just give you that as a way of saying that we're all going through the same thing. Each city is going through the same thing if you build on that type of tax base. So our plan is to open up smartly as we take the advice from the county health officer, and then encouraging the social distancing. And I think I mentioned this before, where, for example, a restaurant that, the fire marshal said you can serve 50 people in your small restaurant. When you open back up, it may be a requirement that you can only do 25 or
Right,
20,
right.
because you just don't have the ability of social distancing. So, but that's better than not opening at all.
Right.
And what I would say is we want people to listen to those social distancing practices, because what you don't want to do is when they open back up, they'll do what they call contact tracing. And we don't want to find out that your business is the hotspot. It's 5 people that got sick. They all live in different parts of the city, but the only place they've been in the last 14 days that coincides with each other is your shop. And
Wow.
and that's how serious it's going to be. That's what it takes. And again, we don't want, for example, 15 people to become positive, and the only thing they have in common is that they visited the city of Seaside 18 days ago. Right. So I wanted to bring that full circle about we don't want to be the hotspot. Right?
And if you're in a business, you don't want to be the hotspot.
You don't want to be the hotspot, right? Yes. And so that's the plan, is to make sure our citizens stay safe and remain safe. And I know it may be a lot of hand-holding along the way to just say, hey, that's really not 6 feet, or remember to bring your mask, or more than likely it'll be mandated that when you come into some of these stores and these facilities, you will have to have a mask on, and maybe we'll figure out a way or encourage the business owner to put out some hand sanitizers and things like that when you see in other communities, other countries. But we will open up. We will get through it.
So I want to switch gears for the last couple of questions here. The positive thing about COVID-19 is that it has really unified and brought people together in a way that is unprecedented. Right. I mean, in our lifetime. Yes. The whole idea of relationship, the whole idea of supporting each other, the whole idea of breaking down the barriers and the walls and communicating and realizing that, the one thing that we have more in common than anything else is that we're all here together. We are all human beings. We're all affected in the same way. So we got this community sense that's being kind of, undergirded or being fostered through this calamity or this crisis. What has the city of Seaside, has anybody in your office began to think, as we open up, what can we do to try to maintain that sense of unity and bring that sense of community back together? Can we spin on that and, for hope, or for lack of a better term, create a better, safer, stronger community within the city?
Yeah, I would say yes. And from my perspective as mayor, I've begun those conversations with business leaders in this community leaders, the faith-based group. We had a meeting earlier this week to talk about those very same things. When we move forward, and really, like I explained to them, you can't say move forward if you don't know where you're at. Right?
Right.
And so I said we have to wait till we hit the bottom, which I call the foundation, that we can grow from.
Right.
And we won't know that until we open up and really see where the city is at. But the inspiration is there. The community is there. So as we move forward, how do we keep that going? And we keep that going by facilitating what the need is. Keep on talking among ourselves. A lot of good things going on Facebook. People are having a lot of fun on Facebook. But those are stress relievers, and that's why I appreciate that. And it's a lot of serious conversations going on, and those things will remain open to us. There's going to be new ways of life, new ways of living, so to speak, new opportunities for growth, either as business or personal. And that's what I want to keep going in the city of Seaside, is that camaraderie of really working together, coming together, and don't stop checking on our older adults that we know live alone. COVID passes by, but still call that person. I volunteer at least twice a week with the food bank about giving out food and things like that. And I hear sometimes that the people that are giving out the food they're saying, I didn't know the need was that bad. I didn't know people were that close. Right. Well, we've talked about years about how many people are that paycheck, that month and a half, or that emergency from losing it all. Right. And right now, because we allow people to stay in their homes with the non-eviction clause, what you need now is food. And that's never going to go away. So we need to strengthen that. If you have extra money, a lot of people in the city of Seaside throughout this community have donated to the food bank. People are thinking about ways to donate blood to the Red Cross. And so I figure we keep that going, and I'm just continuing to have those conversations with the community about how does that move forward, how best do we go about that because I really want the voices of everybody to be at the table.
Right.
So my responsibility is to set up the table, clean the table off, right? Clean the table off, maybe provide a couple masks,
right.
and then have a conversation
right.
With the community.
Right. Just one more question,
Yeah.
but again, I appreciate your time and your candor. It's easy to speak to you and get the answers from you that are relevant to the people who are living. So before I ask my last question, I want to interject one more question.
Okay.
As you know, I volunteer my time and serve on the board with the Village Project, and I've seen the effect this has taken on the Village Project and its clientele. While they are working diligently to maintain service to these people, who are usually the unserved or the underserved portion of the community, the stress factor in being able to supply the services has gone up greatly. What do you see from that part of the community in Seaside, from the nonprofits, from the community, people who are serving in that capacity? What's the best way to channel our efforts into the community of helping somebody? Sure, we want to help the person next door.
Okay.
We still want to call and stay in touch with our friends, but we're part of a larger community. And how do you see is the best way? What advice could you give to the people of Seaside to contribute to the city, which contributes to the recovery and create and maintain a stronger community?
I would say that what I would ask them to do is take a serious look about community service, community involvement, community donations. We have a lot of good nonprofits in this community. You mentioned the Village Project, CPY comes to mind,
Right.
and several others. I guess what I want to say, Dirrick, is clearly is I think it's time for the citizens of Seaside to take stock in themselves and lack for a better, metaphor, pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, right? Now, I didn't say by your bootstraps, because you may not have the bootstraps, right? I don't want to give you an L, but by the bootstraps.
Right.
And if you have the ability to donate or serve on some of these nonprofits, then serve and donate. And maybe it only takes $5 a month, $3 a month. But if the citizens of Seaside would do that, then we can be better served.
Absolutely. And
I would say, to close that answer off, is as a city, we look to strengthen our nonprofits. Remember that foundation I talked about? Growing out of that foundation is what nonprofits are in positions to serve the needs of everyone.
Right.
And how do we strengthen them going forward? It's when I was on the board of United Way, one statistic came to me is that Monterey County had more nonprofits, incorporated than any other county, I think, in California and probably in the world, right? But they were not still running, right? But they were on the books, and I use that as a way to say we're compassionate people. We always find ways to come together and create that organization to help others.
Right.
I would ask the residents of Seaside to continue to do that.
So an hour a week makes a huge difference.
Hour a week makes a huge difference.
$5 a month makes a big difference.
It makes a big difference, and once you do that, even you don't. I won't say you don't miss it, but you realize that $3 a month is more than anything else. Meaning, you don't notice it, but that organization notices it.
Right.
Right. And so that's why we're encouraged. Don't leave it up to someone else. You do it. And maybe it's not $3. Maybe that's too much. Maybe it's $2. But for example, if 1,000 people donated $1 a month, that would be significant to the organization.
That would be huge.
And so I just break it down like that because I wanted to be clear about it, because I think you asked a perfect question. What can we do? Well, you take $3 a month and you send it to 3 nonprofits in the city of Seaside.
It kind of reminds me of something I used to think all the time when we have issues. The voice of the people sometimes comes through adverse reaction. Yes. We hear of rioting and a whole slew of things when things have gone awry. And the media pumps it out and you get excited. I've often thought, what would happen if every person just gave 25 cents to the cause?
Yes.
They could probably still go outside and do it, but if you know,
Okay.
and I want to say riot or protest or whatever,
Right.
but just 25 cents
Okay.
from all the people you see
Yes.
being filmed in upheaval.
Okay.
What would that 25 cents do for them economically, politically, socially? How would that further their point, and what could they do with it? So yeah, so just a little bit, just a little bit. The chump change we call in our pockets,
Right.
you know, could be given to an organization, and if everybody in the city did it, it would be it would be an explosion of resource.
Yeah. It would just change your community. You know, it's our city is small enough that it would change our community. That if the individuals that needed that counseling, those youth that needed that counseling by just throw some people out there. There's Project CPY, for example. And I know there's a lot of other good organizations, but I just want to throw that example out there. They focus on the most needy. If the most needy did not need, then our community would not have that ill.
Right.
You know, sometimes when we look and we say, well, that young person or that person has a you know, alcoholism problem or a drug problem. If that was cured, then as a society we would feel much better about ourselves.
Right.
Much comfortable going outside. We wouldn't have some of the things that seem to depress us.
Right.
You know, when we look at society and we say, hey, well, why is that person suffering the way they're suffering? Well, because they don't have the services that we should be providing.
Right.
While we drive by and go buy a $3 latte.
Right, exactly. Let's be deliberate in our actions to try to resolve it. Let's think more globally and let's look down the road and see what our one effect by opening our business up too soon could have versus $3 that we have could go out and how much more that would give to our community. Just a little more thought, a little more patience, right?
I would say so. A little more thought, a little more patience. And again, our first responsibility to each other is to do no harm, right? We don't want you to hurt yourself, but you don't have a right to harm me. And the thing is, we don't know you don't have COVID.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. And so until we do a better job of testing, I would just say, why would you want to be around someone you're not sure about? You know, family members, fine. So, you know, we encourage you to, someone living in your household, walk around the block, walk through the park, you know, don't stop and, you know, lay a blanket out, but walk through the park, walk around your neighborhood. And when we open up the business, you know, shop in Seaside. Right. And slowly but surely we can get through this together. Yes.
What would your message be to the community at large? What's on your heart to say to people regarding this?
I would just say, Dirrick, for me, it's about community. That's my background. You know, when I was growing up, that's what I've seen. I've seen the nonprofits working together. I've seen the service groups working together. You know, I tell the stories all the time about, you know, I didn't know how the buses ran. I didn't know it was a committee somewhere in the community that made the buses run on time. Right. Right. I didn't know someone picked which community or which corner would have the bus stop. Right. Right. I didn't know how the police responded. I didn't know the fire department had a certain amount of time to get to the fire. Right. But now that I know that, I have to take a leadership position as an adult. And I'm asking people in the community to remember, as adults, it's our responsibility to make a better community for our children and the people that came before us. Right. You know, and so that's what I see. I see a wonderful community coming together with patience. We're going to get through this crisis together if we stick together, and together we can get through this crisis. So that's what I see. It's just after this is pass us by, so to speak, us continue to be together. Because we, you know, as Americans, we get through a lot. We go through a lot. And this is just something else we have to get through. But while we're getting through it, I don't want one person to unnecessarily pass away because I wanted to open up the city too soon, or I wanted to stand close to my friend when I see them, or I'm not strong enough to wear a mask and step 6 feet back. If that's all I have to do is to save that stranger or save my friend's life, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to step back 6 feet. Sometimes I find myself doing that. A person gets a little too close, and I don't say, hey, step back. I take a step back because it's more important to save that life than it is to have a so-called intimate conversation.
Right. Absolutely.
And so I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. Don't know, but I would wish that all the elected officials would be so available and so candid. But I think what he said today kind of covers the gamut for any city around. It is better for us to be deliberate than to be defiant. And in our deliberate actions, think about the community, think about yourself, and be patient.